You know, I've played quite a lot of Pokemon in my day, so much so that I even have a YouTube channel where I just play Pokemon, and on said YouTube channel, I've ranked every Pokemon game more than once. Hey, I spent way too much time talking about the intro in that video. Basically, we're going to Metacritic, a site that rates games. Users can rate the games. We're making an unbiased tier list because people were mad that my tier list were biased when I was on the only person that tier lists were supposed to be biased. Anyway, back to the video. But for example here, we have Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, critic reviews, which rank it a 97, and then we have what we're going to be looking at is the user scores, which ranks it an 8.8. Much like how this person, exit, I don't know how to say your name, gave it a 10 and said this is easily the best open world ever made and nothing even get close to it. Great sentence, great review, very insightful, 10 out of 10, perfect. But if we look at Pokemon games, different story. First up, we got Pokemon Legends Arceus. We're also going to be ranking them as you can see here. We have S through F on my glorious MS Paint tier list. I wanted to get one of those fancy like whiteboards. However, those things are ridiculously expensive and MS Paint is funny. So I went with MS Paint. We have a generally favorable user score of 8.1 and then a critic score of 83. I don't know why they go with different scaling systems like 83 versus 8.1. Isn't that just the same thing like 8.3, 8... Whatever, this game is an underrated gem. It is my favorite video game of all time. Catching Pokemon in this game felt like it was part of exploring rather than a chore that I would do when I saw a cool Pokemon. And then right after that we have a 6 out of 10, which is, you know, quite a difference. Basically, a repetitive stealth Pokemon game with a bigger emphasis on adventure, exploring, and story with less of a focus on training and battling. I would rather play Pokemon Stadium 3. I don't think that game exists. A person could make an argument that this game is really a 4 if it didn't have the Pokemon name brand attached to it. Production quality is amazing though. You can tell it's big budget. So if there were no Pokemon, the game would be worse. I guess I agree with that. Yeah, sure. Okay, great review, very insightful. Trying to be unbiased here. Treasure or Trash ranks for Legends Arceus at 10 and says treasure with a ton of exclamation points. I think we've seen all we need to see for Legends Arceus. Pretty solid game. First game we're starting out with though, so it's a little hard to place it on the tier list. If I scroll down here though, I have all my games. So we have an 8. I don't really know where that skews in the grand scheme of Pokemon. That could be really high, that could be really low. I have a feeling a lot of the Switch games rank really low. I'm gonna put it in B tier for now. Let's go with Pokemon Platinum version. My personal favorite Pokemon game, I would say. Generally favorable score of 83 among critics, 8.9 amongst users. That might be the highest Pokemon game that we look at because Pokemon fans and reviewers in general tend to skew on the negative side. So seeing an 8.9 is really interesting. Greatest game of all time, amazing history, amazing Pokemon, and star, more words. Very insightful review. I also agree with the more words. Pokemon Platinum version is not more words than Pokemon Diamond version or Pokemon Pearl version. In fact, it's the same amount of words. But yes, I've seen all I need to see. Treasure or Trash says treasure, 10 out of 10. We're putting it in S tier. All right, how about we go all the way back to Pokemon Ruby version, the oldest Pokemon game on Metacritic. For some reason, according to Metacritic, Pokemon Red, Blue, Yellow, Gold, Silver, and Crystal, they just don't exist. We're gonna look at Ruby version, which has an 8.4. That's pretty good. That's better than Legends Arceus, but what are we saying about it? Ooh, we got a 5 out of 10 from Gripper. Ruby and Sapphire are a step up from Gen 1 and 2 games, but feel lackluster compared to Pokemon Emerald. Ruby and Sapphire added Natures, Ivies, and Eevees, which are all staples. Ruby and Sapphire are the first games to have villains messing with legendaries. Ruby and Sapphire's story and difficulty feels mid. Overall, 5 out of 10. Treasure or Trash is here again with Treasure. I want to see what Pokemon games Treasure or Trash doesn't like, but so far every game we looked at is a 10 out of 10 according to them, and I appreciate their ratings. We have a 2 from GD's reviews in May of 2022. Pokemon Ruby and Sapphire are a massive step backwards from the previous generation of Gold, Silver, and Crystal. Day and night is gone, and so is going to multiple regions. It does though, however, mark the start of double battles, natures, and abilities that have become staples of the series ever since, at the expense of making it much more complicated on the player's end compared to the first 2 generations of the games. The game overall is challenging, with a fantastic soundtrack that is easily among the best in the series to this day, and the new Pokemon introduced in this generation are truly great. As soon as you beat the game though, it grinds to a complete halt, but this seems to be a chronic problem with Pokemon games in general across the generations for the most part, with only a handful of exceptions. As soon as you beat the game though, it grinds to a complete halt. Generally speaking, when I beat a video game, there's not more things to do. That goes for Pokemon. That goes for not Pokemon. And I know what you may be thinking. Oh, he only plays Pokemon. If I only play Pokemon, then why do I have this chat? You know what this is? This is a PSP. There's no Pokemon on this. Technically, legally, there's no Pokemon on this. Okay, Nintendo, if you're watching. I think we've seen all we need to see about Pokemon Ruby version. I'm going to take you, Ruby. And since you were better than Legends Arceus, but worse than Platinum, I think A is a solid rating according to Metacritic. I mean, we're going by the numbers mostly, just reading the reviews because they're funny. Next up, how about we go back to the DS era and let's look up Pokemon White's version. Ooh, only an 8 out of 10. That's the lowest one we've seen so far for Pokemon Black. So I always felt like, I'm interjecting my own opinion here. Sorry guys for interjecting my own opinion in a video not about my opinion. I always felt like Gen 5, Black and White 2, were rather underappreciated. A lot of people skipped them, a lot of people just didn't play them. A lot of people just, there's so many times where I talk to a Pokemon fan and they're like, man, I love Pokemon, never played Gen 5. But if we look at the reviews, we have like about 1,000 reviews, overwhelmingly positive, but there's some negative reviews here. This game was Pokemon at its peak. It started going downhill after this with X and Y, Sun and Moon, and don't even get me started on the Switch games. I'm excited to look at the Switch games. I'm sure we'll see a lot of unbiased reviews when we get to the Switch games from people who've actually played the game. Treasure or Trash says it's a 10, good sign. Good, I'm not too fond of the only Gen 4 Pokemons being in this game thing. A bit lackluster. I think they played a glitched version because my game only had Gen 5 Pokemon. Theirs only had Gen 4. Maybe they got like maybe it's a European copy, only has Gen 4 Pokemon. 96 out of 100. You can't give me a specific number like that and then just not elaborate. This is an boring game. B2W2 is so much better. The progressions... Sony's? The Progensonies is so slow. The Firestarter, star. The anime, star. This, star. Pokemon Black is not a good game. Probably one of the worst. 4 out of 10, and Black 2, White 2 is a 10 out of 10. This person gave it a 0, but this is not English. So if anybody speaks not English and can translate this, let me know. Oh, GDS Reviews is back. 3 out of 10. Pokemon Black and White are games full of spectacular extremes. The soundtrack, apart from the grating low HP music, is great. That's quite the criticism to start off with. The world is diverse with a day, night, and seasons. Has an evil team that comes extremely close to its goal and disrupts the Pokemon League like no team ever before or since. Well, I mean, except for Sword and Shield, but whatever. And then has the worst Pokemon of any generation and grinds to a halt after beating. Didn't you say this about Ruby or Platinum or something? Like, yeah, like when you beat a game, there's generally not much else to do. I guess they're talking about post-game, comparing it to like Gold and Silver, because like Gold and Silver had a post-game of Kanto, which you can beat in like 40 minutes, or just one toilet sitting, if you're me. The games have no older generation Pokemon available to you until you beat the game, and that makes the game an exceptional and often frustrating challenge. This generation of Pokemon is so terrible, I passionately refer to it as the Rot Gut generation. What? Rot Gut? Rot Gut. Poor quality and potentially toxic alcoholic liquor. The final boss isn't even the champion. It's the evil team's leader heading Ghetsis. Okay, spoilers. Ghetsis' theme has since become both the stuff of legends and the butt of jokes, with the chants sounding like Dennis in his imposing battle theme. You can only face the real champion after beating the game, but then the game grinds to a complete halt by then. They said the game grinds to a halt twice after beating the game, but then they said 2 things you can do after beating the game. Of the about 1,000 user reviews, we got an 8 out of 10 exactly, so I guess that puts it below Legends Arceus. I could put it in C tier, could put it in B tier. I think for now we're gonna put it in B tier because it's just worse than Legends Arceus. Bam. Let's have some fun. Let's look at Pokemon Sword and Shield, a game with no controversies that was universally loved, that many people made videos about praising about how good it was and how amazing it was and how it's the greatest game in the series and can do no wrong. So we have 6,000 user ratings, which is about, like 5 to 6 times more than any other game we looked at so far. Critic score of 80, user score of 4.7. Truly one of the laziest games they have ever made. Poor optimization, massive decks and move cuts for no good reason, paired with an uninspired world design and truly archaic graphics in multiple areas makes it hard to claim they really cared. Trashy graphics, boring gameplay. The whole game is just very effort. I was trying to find some more reviews to look at, but Treasure or Trash says trash and gives it a 0. That solidifies it to me. Because I'm curious, let's continue the Pokemon Switch train and let's go to Pokemon Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. So Pikachu has a 79, Eevee has an 80. I didn't realize they separated the games, but we'll go with Pikachu because it has the lowest rating and probably more reviews because it's Pikachu. 6.3. Oh, Gripper's back. This game is overhated, but that doesn't mean this game is great. I like the Kanto, looks great. but the game doesn't fix the incomplete Kanto region. Kanto is still boring. I like the ride Pokemon and the roaming wild Pokemon, but at the same time, the game really didn't need to exist. Wow, I kind of agree with that. This person gave it a 1 out of 10. Absolutely the worst Switch game. No TV support, so you can't play with the controller. I played Let's Go on a TV, like almost exclusively, I think. I know in handheld mode it was easy to catch Pokemon because you didn't have to like do the annoying flick with your wrist and the Joy-Con. I'm guessing they mean you couldn't use the Pro Controller, but you could play on a TV. So I don't know what they mean by that. This game looks great and the trainer battles are great, but the fact that you can't battle wild Pokemon completely destroys the whole experience. I agree with that. I understand the Let's Go catching mechanic, but also just not battling wild Pokemon in a Pokemon game didn't feel right. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Treasure or Trash. Treasure or Trash has, I was about to say, I can't find their review. Treasure or Trash says it's trash though. But the reviews are pretty like middle of the pack. So if we look at the tier list, I guess I'll put it in C tier, maybe D tier. No, probably D. I'll put it in D tier. Yeah, because Pokemon Black had an 80. Let's Go Pikachu had a 6.3. That's a pretty significant drop off. And then Sword and Shield had a 4 point something. So far we have one game in each tier. That is very satisfying to look at. But now the next game we'll have to share our tier with something else. Let's stick to Kanto. Go to Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green. 8.5 user score out of 760 ratings. That's pretty high. Okay, nobody is speaking English. Unfortunately, I cannot read not English. My camera overheated. I gotta take a break.
The next day.
We have a 10 out of 10. In my opinion, this is the best Pokemon game ever made alongside Pokemon Leaf Green. They are basically the same game. I see where you're coming from. Agree. And then this person gives it a 7 out of 10. Fire mid. I'm seeing a lot of 7 to 9s out of 10. This is the first negative review I saw from Square Dash in July of 2023. One thing that I also found interesting, a lot of these reviews for even the older games are relatively recent reviews. So I wonder what's possessing this person, for example, to come to this game 19 years later and write an angry review. But let's see what they gotta say. The first generation of Pokemon games were lackluster, but they were at least excusable because they were the first entry of the series that didn't yet know what it was. The remakes, however, do not have this excuse. IDK how people defend these games that could have fixed so many of the game's issues, but instead they decided the only change worth making was the waste of time known as the Sevi Islands. Kanto already had a terrible variety of mods, making you still encounter Pidgeys when you were at 6 badges in, while locking most of the actual interesting ones behind the Safari Zone or hard to reach dungeon floors. And this isn't because they only had 151 to work with. Black and White had about the same number, and they were constantly giving you new and interesting Pokemon to catch in every location. Kanto is just a boring region with a boring early game, no story, no interesting characters, nothing that makes you want to explore, and the late game feels unfinished. How did they already make a good game of Ruby and Sapphire, and then fail to fix the glaring mistakes that made Gen 1 such a slog to get through? The game isn't worth your time, go replay Gen 5. It's interesting to see reviews like this, people compare it to other Pokemon games, especially Pokemon games released so much later, like Pokemon Black and White in this case. And a lot of the times, people like to interject what their favorite game was and compare it to said game, rather than looking at just that one game. Another thing I've noticed is a lot of these reviews aren't just from Pokemon fans. I feel like, generally speaking, a lot of people who watch Pokemon YouTubers, like my channel, for the most part, play Pokemon as their main game, whereas a lot of the reviews here are people who play a wide variety of games. Like, I don't know if this person's a good example, but if you look at Square Dash's thing, okay, they reviewed only Pokemon games. So, oh, Team Fortress 2, though, and Phoenix Wright, and Monster Hunter. Okay, a lot of not Pokemon games, actually more not Pokemon games. A lot of the times people criticize Pokemon fans because they only play Pokemon, so I like seeing reviews from people who play a ton of other games. With that being said, though, Pokemon Fire Red and Leaf Green, pretty mid, as somebody said. I forgot what their name was. But I'm going to put them rather middle of the pack. They got to be better than Leaf Green. Leaf Green's the same game. They got to be better than Let's Go Pikachu and Eevee. Probably not better than Black and White. It had a lower score than Black and White, I think, at least, right? I'm not going to check. I'm just going to assume... No, it had a higher score than Black and White. Hold on. 8.5? That's better. Wait, that's an A tier. Yeah. Wait, no, that's better. That's the second best game we've looked at. I almost let my personal bias get in there. I love Fire Red Leaf Green. I personally put them in C tier, but this is not about my tier list. This is an unbiased tier list. Let's look up Diamond and Pearl. Diamond only has an 8.1. A bit lower than I thought, especially compared to Platinum, which had an 8.9. Oh, Gripper's back. 1 out of 10. This game is horrible. Everything is bad. The story, the evil team, Cyrus, Cynthia, Pokedex, Gym Leader, and E4 teams are bad. And also the game runs so slow. Dialga and Palkia don't do anything, unlike RSE, where Groudon and Kyogre change the weather. Overall, awful game, 1 out of 10. First off, how dare you say Cynthia's terrible? Second off, Dialga and Palkia literally change time and space. What more do you want? Treasure or trash, says Treasure though. 42 out of 100, so overrated. Why 42? Why such a specific number and then you don't elaborate? Why do people do this? Okay, this person gives it a 43, but they at least elaborate. The core Pokemon gameplay didn't age well since its repetitiveness and simplicity appears quite dull in today's gaming landscape. Do you mean today as in 2007 or today as in 2022 in your author review? Because there's a big difference there. And the speed of battles has been significantly slowed down, making them extremely tedious at times. Even so, the often labyrinth-rich level design makes it for an interesting exploration experience, and the rewarding challenge when fighting the strongest trainers pushes the player to put real effort into their strategies, while super contests and the underground tunnels offer some decently fun, entertaining gameplay variety. Annoyingly enough though, team building options are partially heavily restricted due to the embarrassing low amount of fire-type Pokemon available in the region. I knew someone was going to mention that, the fire-type Pokemon in the region. I think it's literally 2. I think it's Ponyta and then the start of Chimchar. So if you don't pick Chimchar, it's 1. I like reviews like this because they gave a very specific number and then they elaborated. I would have liked to know more about how they arrived at that number, but I agree with a lot of things they said. This person though gave it a 0. Really boring, stretched gameplay. I don't know what that means. Almost no usable Pokemon. This person has never used a Whiscash, I guess. Characters have no lore at all and way too many caves. Yeah, I mean, it's really the same cave like 6 times that you go through, but that is true. You do go through the same cave too many times. All right, we spent enough time there. 8.1. That puts it right in between Pokemon Black and Legends Arceus because I believe Pokemon Black was an 8 and then Legends Arceus was an 8.2. So, bam, put you right next to Legends Arceus. So far, this tier list is definitely a tier list. I don't think a lot of people in the comments will agree with the tier list. However, it's unbiased, chat. So, you have to agree. That's not how that works, but we're going to pretend like it is. Speaking of unbiased, Pokemon Sun may or may not be my least favorite Pokemon game. May or may not be the result of a lot of the comments on that video where I made a tier list being negative. 7.6 user score out of 1,400 ratings. That's pretty low. I know I've been saying this for months, but I'm actually going to replay this game soon. I'm going to the Toronto Pokemon Regionals in December. Say hi if you see me. I will bring my 3DS, I will shiny hunt, and I will also just play through Pokemon Sun again. Because, or maybe Ultra Sun, but one of the two. I just need to do it again. Our friend Gripper is back though. Give it a 6 out of 10, which honestly, I would probably rate it around the same, but let's see what they gotta say. The game had so much potential, but there are the same problems. Let's start with the good. The island trials are a fun new idea. The 4 islands instead of a big region. They fixed the problem with Gen 6 gym leaders not having a 3D model in battle. I don't remember this, but yeah, they're right. Because in X and Y, when you fight the gym leaders, you don't ever actually see them. The story is pretty good in this game. Star. Problems. There are not enough island trials. 7 types don't have trial. Pony Island is just horrible. And the game is too handholdy. There are too many lazy and bad cutscenes. 6 out of 10. Treasure or trash, says Treasure though. So I respect their opinion. 10 out of 10. A lot of exclamation points. Love to see it. There's Miguel again with a very specific number and then no elaboration. Let's look up a 10 out of 10 score from 2022 though. The game has an amazing story, great character development, and one of the best worlds a Pokemon game had in a while. Although the game may not seem as much at first, it gets better and better as you progress. The new battle animations and styles are so wonderful that sometimes I walk into battles just to see the animations. If you have a 3DS, you must try it out. I will try it out again. But I think we've seen all that we need to see. People don't like it when I talk about Sun and Moon. 7.6 out of 10 user score though. That is actually going to land you in D tier. I guess we'll just knock out the Ultra games while we're here. I would assume they'd be higher. So 7.6 out of 1,400 ratings for Sun. On Ultra Sun, also 7.6. We have a review from our friend Gripper, which is at the top. They give it a 2 this time. This game is so lazy and bad. The only thing this game does good is make Pony Island decent. They're talking about Pony Island again. The game doesn't fix any of the other issues Sun and Moon had. The game's level curve is horrible and inconsistent. I don't remember this at all, really, but I guess I'll see it when I replay it again. I've only played through Sun and Moon like 3 times, guys, so bear with me. The decent story from Sun and Moon was ruined in this game. This is a terrible and horrible game, 2 out of 10. This is another, like, it's hard to rate the Ultra games, I think, more so than a lot of other games, because if you were to compare them to Sun and Moon directly, like, yeah, they were kind of disappointing, coming just a year after the game and not changing too much. But if you look at them standalone, like, yes, they are technically better than Sun and Moon. I feel like if Sun and Moon had never come out, right, and we just had the Ultra games, kind of like X and Y had no follow-up, we just got the Ultra games this time, I think these games would be rated a lot higher and seen as a much better game. But for me personally, and I guess Gripper as well, Playing Sun and Moon again, only a year later, with such minor changes was kind of disappointing. I should stop giving my opinion and just read what these people are saying. Look guys, like I said earlier, I'm a Pokemon YouTuber. I can't help it. I have to talk about things I don't like. It's my whole personality. Treasure or Trash says trash. Let's read a 10 out of 10 review from Mario iPod. Underappreciated, excellent Pokemon game. With 807 Pokemon in this game, you might need multiple games to obtain them all. You have nearly unlimited options for how to team build. Its story has a few but significant changes from Sun and Moon, but it more than makes up for it with the expanded postgame. The Battle Agency in particular is a fun way to team up with friends, and the underappreciated Battle Royal is exclusive to this generation. Kinda forgot about Battle Royals. That's one thing that people don't really talk about a lot. 76, that puts it above Sun and Moon, so I guess we'll put it in C tier for the Ultra games. I mean, no matter where we put it doesn't really matter. It's just the fact that it's above Sun but below Black and White is all that matters. So sure, we'll put it in C. Let's look up a fun one. Pokemon Brilliant Diamond. 73 Metacritic score from critics, which is pretty low. 5 score. Is that the lowest score we've seen? No, that's higher than Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield at 4.7. I have opinions about this game that I'm not going to address. I will say they are definitely remakes of Diamond and Pearl though. This game made me question why I spent $80 Australian on it. This game is fun in very few sections. The rest is just a boring mess. Well, Australian money's not real, so you basically got it for free, so think of it like that. A remake that just ports the DS game with all of its problems and fault, not adding anything to the game, and overall boring, the worst remakes in the series. Feels so cheap and soulless, doesn't include a lot of platinum content, and adds barely anything new. The originals are better in almost every way. Would have preferred a re-release, honestly. This feels like a low-budget game or a mock-up from early development. Not a faithful remake, as adored features were removed. Cash grab in my eyes. I don't know what features were removed from the original game. I feel like one of the biggest things that faults this game is that it was too faithful of a remake and didn't change enough things. At the same time, it's a Diamond and Pearl remake, not a Platinum remake, so it's like hard to fault it for that. I personally agree that I would prefer a Platinum remake, but also at the same time, it's hard for me to fault the game when it's supposed to be a Diamond and Pearl remake, not a Platinum remake, so it's like, I don't think the games were bad. I'm going to stop talking about my opinion. This is not about my opinion. This is about people like Ketter's opinion, who say so many things done poorly when the game is almost the same as the original. Not worth the money nor the hype. 4 out of 10. You know what? I've seen all that I need to see. Treasure or Trash says trash. I'm going an F tier, but above Pokemon Sword and Shield. I'll put you right there. What do we have left, chat? We have kind of a lot of games left, actually. Let's kind of speed run through this. Pokemon Y, 88 critic score, which is the highest we've seen, I think. 7.5 amongst users, which is not the best, but not bad. This is the best thing that has ever happened to me. Why are you even reading this review? Go play Pokemon Y. You know, this was posted 10 years after the game came out. So, like, I'm curious. Did you just play this game 10 years later? Or did you just always love this game and decide to make a review 10 years after the fact? Like, what changed your life about Pokemon Y? Whoa, Treasure or Trash doesn't like these games. Trash. This game was okay, it was easy, but like the fun and bad kind of funny. But I didn't like that every gym has 3 Pokemon and every E4 member has 4 Pokemon, which makes sense, but come on Nintendo, that's so easy, we're not 5-year-olds. Overrated, archaic JRPG. Pokemon games have stayed relatively the same gameplay-wise after 20 years, with minor insignificant additions that don't fundamentally change anything. You have to understand that this kind of gameplay was acceptable back in the 80s and early 90s on the NES and SNES consoles, but gaming has advanced a lot since then. On Game Boy, the first generation was a success mostly because of the fun concept of monster catching and the anime, as the game even back then was nothing special. Little more than a fad. That, after 20 years, Nintendo has kept remaking the same archaic concept with minor additions and just upgrading the graphics, and the gullible masses keep buying this stuff is so baffling to me. Baffling. I don't know what this word means, and neither does Google, so hugely overrated, and if you're older than 12 and still play Pokemon, something's wrong with you. I can play cute games just fine. It is not the presentation that is the issue, it is the gameplay. How can you find something so simplistic and easy/unchallenging, mentally stimulating if you're an adult? I think this goes next to Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. It might be just above Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. I don't remember. They were close though, so they're in the same tier regardless, I think. Let's kind of just rapid fire these though, because I've been recording for an hour. Let's go with Omega Ruby. It is a 7.6, so we're just in this like 7.4 to 7.6 hellhole at this point. Gripper's back, 8 out of 10, solid score. Crunchy Dino gives it a 0. Pokemon Water Simulator is bad because all I could encounter was ice of the liquid variety. Pokemon Ruby, more like Pokemon Poopy. Ooh, Treasure or Trash does not like these games. 1 out of 10 from 2021. All the critics from above got all the reviews needed. Disappointing battle from trainer and gym. I remember got stuck in double battle in Psychic Gym in original game cause it's really hard. And in here, I easily beat them by only using 2 Pokemon. Really? And also, what's wrong with the road in this game? There's a small entrance and my characters keep getting stuck to enter the road. What else that's disappointing? Safari Zone? Challenge? Elite Four? Except the graphics, I guess all of them. Please make Pokemon more challenging. Okay, 7.6 is definitely above Y version. I don't know if it's above Ultra Sun, Ultra Moon. I think, I'm not even gonna bother checking, but whatever. They're all C tier. Black 2 is an 8.2. But what do we gotta say here? Gripper's back, 10 out of 10. The second sequel in Pokemon. Second sequel? What's the first one? Is Gold and Silver the first one? Maybe? Pokemon Black 2 and 1 have a ton of new cities and areas. The game makes the 2-year gap work so perfectly. They also added Pokemon to this game, which was an issue in Pokemon Black and White 1. Did Pokemon Black and White 1 not have Pokemon? What do you mean by that? You mean older Pokemon? These are amazing sequels, 10 out of 10. A lot of high scores. Treasure of Trash likes them. It's like Pokemon Black, but better. It's better in all things. Pokemon Black is good. Best Pokemon game, definitely. Average score of 8.2, that is the same as Legends Arceus though, and Legends Arceus I believe was put in the B tier, so we're gonna put it here. I mean, technically it's gonna be above Diamond version. Diamond was an 8.1. I don't know how I'm remembering all these numbers, by the way. I'm not writing these down. So we'll just scooch you over, put Pokemon Black here, Pokemon Diamond here. So far it's a tier list. Alright, got 3 games left. Some will consider some of these the best in the series, some will consider them the worst. I wonder which is which. Pokemon Heart Gold, universal acclaim, 9.2. Wow, that is high. Heart Gold and Soul Silver have been a subject of controversy lately because people don't like the level gap and people, 10 years after the game came out realized there was a level gap. Crazy how that works. I actually want to scroll to a negative review and see when it was posted and see how many reviews comment about the level gap. Treasure Trash is 10 though. We got a 5 out of 10 from 2019. The big overrated Pokemon game. Story is bad as hell, if it has any. Difficulty is null. Post-game is boring, being Kanto almost empty, but better than the original versions. This game is the Gen 1er exhaust outlet to defend their not Gen 1ers because they like something from almost 10 years ago. Ooh, 1 out of 10 from 2019? It is a bad Pokemon game. Not only that, but the only Pokemon game that is bad. All others are at least okay. This came out before Sword and Shield came out, so keep that in mind. But this one is slow, bland, not innovative, and they managed to make the few minigames weird and unplayable. It's also for the other game's looks what Polar Express is to reality. This ugliness makes the game even more boring than it adding nothing did. I don't understand this sentence. Polar Express? I haven't seen that movie. Okay, looks like I was wrong. I see nobody talking about the level gap, but on YouTube specifically, I've been making videos for a while, right? And whenever I would talk about Sword and Shield, or not Sword and Shield, whenever I would talk about Heart Gold and Soul Silver for the longest time, I would see positive comments, people love this game, and then I would say the last 3 years or so, I started seeing an overwhelming amount of comments that were like, actually these games suck, level gap sucks, bad pacing, the same 2 comments about level gaps and pacing. So it's interesting to also see how people's opinions on games change over a decade after they come out. With that being said though, this was by far the best rated Pokemon game. Actually not by far, by a decent bit, the best rated Pokemon game. So Pokemon Platinum, move over, Heart Gold, go here. These games came out back to back, by the way. 2009 for Platinum, 2010 for Heart Gold, Soul Silver. So back to back, the 2 best Pokemon games apparently. Unless, Scarlet beats that, which is a possibility. But for now, Emerald version. 7.6 by critics, 8.8 out of about 1,000 users. So pretty high as well. Gripper got a 10 here. This is my favorite Pokemon game. The game has improved the story of RS. Both teams do stuff in the game and oppose each other, which is great. They fixed issues from RS, and of course the Battle Frontier. This game was hardest game at the time, which was very fun. Easy, 10 out of 10. Outstanding presentation, weighed down by an aggravating pacing, technical issues, and questionable game design choices. Like what? You can't just say that and then not elaborate. Questionable game design choices? I'm trying to think, maybe they didn't like double battles? Maybe they didn't like the gym order? I don't know. Well, we got a 4 out of 10 from this year, 2024. A very non-existent story. I don't see how this game is highly rated, but it's the same with Pokemon games that came out before it as well. Hashtag save soil. Is it about berries? Like soil for the berries? I don't know what that means. Seems like overwhelmingly positive reviews though. Treasure or Trash says a 10. Mudkip, do I say more? You gotta say more, Mr. Pokemon, because we are putting Emerald version in S tier, but at the low end of S tier. Just like that. And that leaves one more Pokemon game. The newest one. Scarlet. Gee, I wonder where this one will place. 72 by critics, which is the lowest we've seen, I think. 3.3 from users out of 3,500, which is kind of a lot. And that's what Sword and Shield had. 1 out of 10. Ignore the bugs, frame drops, and glitches. The world is empty. 90% of buildings cannot be entered. Towns are barren. Pickup items are meaningless. Copy and pasted food shops are meaningless. And the food items and their mixed usage too complicated that I didn't bother using any through my playthrough. Why are there 3 RNG boosts for each? I don't know what they mean with the sandwich stuff. But yeah, can't enter most buildings. World is open, but there's a lot of just nothing also. It's just a big circle. Like, yeah. 0 out of 10. The worst experience in games in all of my life. I want my money back and I will never buy a Pokemon game again. A lot of bugs. A lot of bugs indeed. Seeing a lot of zeros. Really buggy, really boring, and a ton of subtle, woke nonsense. What's so woke about? What? What do you mean? 0 replayability. Can only verse the Elite Four once, and many missing things simply to be reintroduced in DLC. Horrible game. Horrible designs that are so far removed from what Pokemon look like. The worst in the series and a reliable glimpse into the future of Pokemon games. That was a lot of words. Seeing a lot of zeros. A lot of low ratings in general, but a lot of zeros. I want to see a 10. Here's a 10 from Suno Cloud from March of this year. Straight up the best game, dude. It was pretty bad in the start, but now, 2024, it is basically a bug-free, I don't know about that one, and is very good. And the DLC is just top tier. Even without DLC, you have a lot to do in it. It's not what others said, it's better, way better, would definitely recommend. Alright, enough of that. You already knew where this is gonna go. Bam. So there's the full tier list, as you can look at. I will put mine up here too, if I remember. This looks very different from my tier list. I feel like a lot of people also disagree with this, but hey, I was trying to be unbiased. I just looked at Metacritic reviews and just rated it based off of that. This is essentially just the order that they would appear in Metacritic, from the top being Heart Gold being the highest rated, and of course Scarlet Violet being the lowest, and then everything in between just being in between those. But yeah, there's the unbiased tier list that some of you guys wanted. Does it look like your tier list? Probably not. The coffee's cold, doesn't taste good. Do you like my mug, by the way? Look at this mug. This is only $7, chat. This is like an official Pokemon Japan Charizard mug. With all that out of the way, thanks for watching. Leave a like if you enjoyed, or just don't. Have a great rest of your day. Or just don't, I guess, too. You know, it's up to you. But yeah, I'll see you next time, or not. Bye-bye.